Three. Welcome back, everybody, to another Epidose of These Crazy People That Just Keep Eating Meat and Can't Stop Talking About It. My name is Tom. I've got a host of the usual suspects here. Mine is Justin, who is hopefully out finding something regular to do. Actually, he's on vacation in beautiful Mount Shasta, living the life, sending us pictures of waterfalls and cute little trees and crap like that. So we're kind of sick of him bragging about it at this point. Anyways, he's not here, but we are. And today the tables get turned. Instead of me interviewing somebody, instead of everybody just hammering it out, we're going to turn the tables on Tom. Tom's going to get interviewed. And for that, I'm going to defer to Emily to kind of run the show and let the other two major components of the peanut gallery hammer away. No holds barred.
Yay. I am so excited about this because you always ask us these really great questions, and there is so much that you went through to get this started that I know that you've made some YouTube videos of you talking about your story, but I would like for us to get to ask you questions about what your experience has been like with carnivore.
Yeah, I'm actually grateful for the opportunity because when you sit down and you try and make a video about your experience, which I did because I kept having people asking me, instead of trying to type it out or something, I was like, well, let's make a video. I made two particularly focused videos about the subject, but I never really knew exactly what it was people would have asked me. I just kind of guessed. So to have some people kind of formulate real questions probably makes more sense than me guessing.
So my question starts out before carnivore. I want to know, what were some of the things that you noticed first that gave you the idea that you might be on the autism spectrum? What were some of the hints that spurred your basically you're navigating that in your life?
Well, it really starts with somebody telling me that they thought adamantly that I was
So
on.
you didn't have an inkling?
No, not prior to that. It wasn't on my radar, but I didn't really know anything about autism, to be honest with you. I didn't know, never thought about it in terms of adults, because all we hear is about how, the rates are skyrocketing with children and stuff like that. And I never really thought about it in terms of myself. And it never had really even been on my radar until a person I know who had been married to a guy like myself laid it out for me. And I was like, what kind of crazinesses are you talking about?
So they saw some of the common traits, and so they said, hey, that kind of looks like autism.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's what happened. And I was in disbelief, of course, for quite a while.
Now, and then there was a long period of time, correct, that you were diagnosed autistic, and then whenever you actually started eating carnivore. Why did you start eating carnivore?
So I got to carnivore like a lot of people via keto. So my friend said, hey, I talked to a guy and he suggested that a lot of our problems come from excessive carbohydrates. And so we both read Gary Taubes' book, Why We Get Fat First. And then that was just the beginning of many, many books to come. And so I did keto. So that was the end of 2016. And then started on keto and found myself just gravitating towards wanting to eat meat. And I noticed like I was eating kale and brown rice when I ate rice. Well, before I was keto, I ate brown rice, basmati rice, and quinoa, and all stuff. And versus the keto to keep the carbs down, I was getting rid of that stuff. But I noticed like, oh, my digestion's getting better. But like spinach or kale or whatever made it worse. So you eat a lot of cauliflower and stuff like that. It's low carb. Where I forget what they call those types of vegetables, but anyways, I just like, God, I just want to eat meat, but oh my God, if I eat too much protein, I'll kick myself out of ketosis, right? So I can't do that. And so you're sitting on the fence somewhere between, meat's bad for you, meat's going to give you cancer, meat's going to block your colon, meat's going to kick you out of ketosis. And you're like, but I really just want to eat meat. And then I found this whole world of people out there, thousands of people had just been eating meat since the beginning of time, literally. But there's plenty of modern day people doing it. And it blew my mind.
What was the first site that you found on that, eating meat only?
I want to say it was Zero Carb Zen maybe or something. And then I started finding all these Facebook groups. I couldn't tell you which one I discovered first. You know, I liked World Carnivore Tribe. And it was a while before I realized that was this group that Sean had started. Of course, I didn't know who Sean Baker was until I saw him on Joe Rogan, which wasn't that long after I started eating carnivore. I forget how long, but then at some point I realized it. And also Phil Escott's group, 100% Carnivore and Beyond. It's a great group. So I really like Phil and Sean. So those are two that I hung with, but I joined many of them to kind of learn and explore from people, including zeroing in on health and what's the other one I can't think of?
Kelly Hogan.
She's in zeroing in on
That's
health.
Zeroing
I
in
don't
Health.
know if
Yeah.
she has her own.
My Zero Carb Life.
Zero Carb Life.
Oh yeah, that's her YouTube channel, right? Or does she have a Facebook group?
That's Zeroing in on Health too.
That's a YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so did you have any cognitive dissonance going into it at first, and how bad was that for you?
Well, keto, relatively short time I was on keto, like 8-10 months or something, was nothing short of miraculous. And then when I tried just eating meat, I got even better. And I knew that like somewhere along the way I was headed in the right direction, because the worst problem I had was arthritis, and it was terrible, debilitating.
So that was your real marker, your only
Right.
marker so far? Because what about anxiety or any other stuff that?
Well, when I got diagnosed with the so anxiety was the other thing. Was like it wasn't quite as immediate as the pain, as a pain relief from arthritis, but it was tapering off. I noticed like it's just not happening like it was, you know.
But it was night and day almost for the arthritis. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. I'd say within the first 2 weeks of keto, I was a new person. I mean,
really? Wow.
Yeah, but it wasn't gone. But I had crippling back pain, which I thought was just an injury from compressed disc, and I've got spurs on my vertebrae and stuff like that. I've got a reconstructed hand. I'd torn the shoulder. That would bother me. I'd get sciatica, lower back pain would turn into sciatica that was crippling. I'd drag a foot behind me for like some weeks at a time. Couldn't roll over in bed. And then one day I got out of bed and I couldn't turn the doorknob to get out of my room because my hand wouldn't close. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And so what I thought was an accumulation of injuries is actually progressive arthritis. And it started getting better immediately, because I would wake up, I love weightlifting and I had to give it up. But I'd wake up in the morning, my hands would be clenched, and when I'd go to straighten out my fingers, it was horribly painful.
Oh my
gosh. You couldn't will it open. You couldn't just.
I could slowly, but it was extremely painful.
Wow.
Gosh.
And then you go and try and grab a doorknob, and you're like, one day you're doing 90-pound hammer curls like it's your job, and the next day you can't open the door. It's like, what do you do?
Terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying, because you think, how am I going to work?
Right.
Am I going to be able to drive? Can I push a mouse and a keyboard around? I don't know.
Were you contemplating going to the doctor and getting surgery or pills? I mean, was it that bad? Or?
Yeah. So they started. They tried different things, and actually the one pain reliever that worked the best was naproxen or Aleve. It's the same thing. And that turned moderate eczema into ravenous psoriasis.
That's what caused that?
Yeah, well,
You didn't have that before?
That's because when I started taking that is when it really ramped up.
Oh,
So it triggered it.
wow. So
Yeah, and it's a known thing. It's like this commonly happens
Wow.
with, they call that class of over-the-counter drugs NSAIDs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And because they put additives in them to help them pass through the lining of the small intestine to be absorbed in the bloodstream more readily, they also trigger leaky gut syndrome. Apparently, that's the prevailing theory, anyways. So then I was getting pain relief from those, but the psoriasis was out of control, and it took me a long time to figure this out. And it's not like the doctor said anything. I mean, I was asking questions like, well, how much can I take of this? You know, I don't need this much every day, but some days it's like, oh, I got patients that take way more than that, and they seem to be fine. So that's the kind of conversations I'm having, not knowing that these things are related. And this is all stuff I worked out on my own later, and then you meet other people who had the same exact experience.
Wow.
So now, oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, so obviously, you've got the psoriasis, and when did you start looking into PKD?
So,
good question.
I was on carnivore for quite a while, and I still would have the psoriasis come back, right? And I was like, well, let me talk to the folks at Paleo Medicina. I think they might have rebranded their clinic, but we know them as Paleo Medicina. And so you can consult with them for a very reasonable amount of money and do tests and stuff like that. And so essentially I was using that to get, because like from the time that I was taking the pain relievers that made the psoriasis flare up really bad, and then I stopped taking those, got on carnivore, it got better and it got better, but didn't quite go away. And then every once in a while it'll flare up. Don't know exactly what's going on. So I consulted with them, and I was on their diet, the PKD diet, as they prescribed it. I imagine it's slightly different for different patients, depending on what they're being treated for. But when I was on it, it got better and better and almost went away. And I was doing really good. And then I kind of got off PKD because I went on a weightlifting diet, and I was eating a lot of egg whites and a lot of whey protein to supplement protein levels. And there's probably some dairy in there too. And then boom, I got a bad flare up. The thing I wasn't crazy about PKD was really high fat, and it was hard for me to eat that much fat. And I think that's because I'm being a bigger person and wants to lift weights. I think my protein demand was higher than they typically recommended, because I don't think their typical patient is my size or had my ambitions to, squat 500 pounds and stuff like that. So, and for a person my size, I should be able to lift more. I just haven't been able to stay in the gym long enough to. But I broke all my PRs this year after having been out of the gym for like almost 8 years because of arthritis. I went back and I did way better. So I know I can keep going as soon as I can get back in the gym regularly. And then I just started recovering from that bad flare up from 6 years or 6 months ago or whatever. You could still see I got spots, but
It looks better.
Yeah, it looks much better.
It's a lot better. I mean, you guys, I'm sure all the people out there see it in the videos when I rate.
What do you attribute that healing to?
Yeah.
Just random?
I think I had to, like, when it gets bad, there's multiple things you have to look at. One, you could be made worse by histamine levels. I was eating a lot of ground beef, which is known to be high in histamine, so I had to cut that out. I was really eating ground beef to save money over steak. But then I eventually said, a lot of people say, hey, this could clearly be a problem. The other thing, I have to be very careful not to get bit by spiders and mosquitoes, because I itch really bad and it causes a flare up.
That makes sense.
I have to avoid most dairy, at least most of the time. I will occasionally eat things like Parmesan, or Joe's going to correct me.
Parmesan. Say it, Joe.
Parmesan.
Well, it's Parmesan.
Parmesan.
Or Parmigiano in Italian.
Parmigiano.
So I will eat that because it doesn't seem to, and I think it's because they buy the aged cheese that the stuff is broken down and the dairy's broken down. And so I will eat a little of that, but sparingly. And so it took a serious crackdown. Obviously, no egg whites, no whey isolate proteins, none of that fake food. So, and just eating steak, get the freshest steak I can and eat that. And it's been drastically better now, but it tends to happen in very slow cycles. So it's hard to know, like your psoriasis doesn't flare up one day and get completely better the next day.
I see.
Right.
Yeah.
And even the people at Paleo will I think said to me that, yeah, it could be weeks before you really know something's working when it comes to these autoimmune reactions, because they're not just off, right? And it takes a while for stuff like this to heal, but like you guys seen it before, it was all swollen and red.
It looks so much better.
It was way worse back then.
So,
Now, do you take any antihistamines, or speaking of which, what about seasonal allergy?
So antihistamines, I've been buying fresh cow kidney, dehydrating it and putting it in pemmican.
I love that. Great.
And then if I itch, I do take an over-the-counter antihistamine. I take the it's called the Fexafen or something like that. It's the generic for Allegra.
How's that work for you? Instantly?
Well, I take it as a precaution. And like if I start itching for some reason, I don't know why, because I know the psoriasis is going to get worse.
Right.
So I take it. So I think it's working okay. I've never noticed any symptoms from it. It doesn't seem to trigger any flare-ups. Doesn't seem to irritate the typical, leaky gut sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I kind of, I figure I'll take it for a while and then I'll stop for a while and see if everything's getting better. So it's, results is the ultimate result, right?
Oh, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, what about the social anxiety? That's always, my area that I'm always interested in. But what things did you notice before and then after you switched to carnivore?
So when I first was made aware that one of my major issues was anxiety, I had no idea. Just like I did no awareness of any real awareness of autism or how it affected people or who had it or whatever. I didn't understand anxiety. So both of those kind of took a while for me to understand and see how they related to me. And so I noticed that when I got on carnivore, that the decline of anxiety was even faster than it was on keto. And of course, I've been on carnivore a lot longer now than I ever was on keto.
Right.
So what you realize is that anxiety is always there, social anxiety, and it's always influencing your decisions, right? You may not necessarily always outwardly manifest a behavior, but it's influencing your thinking. And then sometimes, the anxiety gets really bad and you have physical symptoms, like I get a knot in my stomach. I tend to kind of breathe irregularly and stuff like that. And I get very preoccupied with whatever's causing anxiety. But I also would have anxiety attacks. I just wake up in the morning and I'm just like, I'm anxious. I don't know why. And everything I thought, I was like, I hope I remember to tie my shoes today. That would give me anxiety. And it's like, you don't know what that is. And I noticed that has been in a steady decline. It wasn't the miraculous improvement that the arthritis was, but it has been in a steady decline. I've been far more social. And that's, I talk about it in the videos all the time. It's like when my friend first talked me into doing videos, I was like, I'm not going to appear on camera. I didn't want to use my real name. I didn't use my real name on Facebook, all that. That all suited me. And then eventually I was like, I don't care. I'll be on camera. I'll say whatever I want to say. Use my real name. I could care less, And so that's like 180 degrees of where I was just, a couple of years ago or whatever.
So just creating videos for you was a high anxiety moment.
Yep.
And now it's like a breeze. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's very anxiety inducing. And now it's like, I can't wait to do it. I can't wait. for one person out there to watch any part of a video that helps them just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know it happens because you get feedback from people.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are reluctant to leave public comments, but the private comments sometimes are just amazing. So
It's gold.
Great.
yeah.
Tom, which did you start? The YouTube channel or the Facebook group first?
I forget because I think the first Facebook group I started was the Ketogenic Fasting Project. And I think by the time I actually got rolling with that and rolling with the videos, I was already switching to carnivore. But my experience had been with keto, right? And I was moving into it. And because carnivore is such a harder sell, like you're trying to
Yeah.
tell people, yeah, it's okay to just eat meat. Like we've been doing it for millions of years. People are like, oh no, you eat too many lamb chops, your
How do you
cholesterol
poop?
go up, but you can eat all the pizza you want and it's okay,
Yeah.
right? That's not the way people are thinking. They're like, well, you eat some pizza made from coconut flour or almond flour, right? That's good for you, right? Yeah. So I stuck kind of with the keto theme in the beginning, and then as I met more people and realized there's this huge community out there, I just went full bore carnivore and was really, really public about it and made the content. But I didn't really change the name of anything. And eventually I just started carnivore groups, like autistic carnivores and carnivores beating autoimmune disease and stuff like that. And the super secret meat cult. So don't tell anybody. So yeah, so that came later, and they get most of my attention, of course. So
Speaking of you helping other people, that has been one of my favorite things about you, and that's why I was so drawn to you when I first met you, was that you weren't just like autistic. You were like autism, and it brings so much healing to other people who might see it as a negative thing or might see it as something that they're ashamed of. And you bring so much power to that word. You bring so much power to just identifying it like a scientist, just like, yeah, these are the symptoms and this is how it matches up. You take away the judgment of autism for yourself and for others. What has that been like to have people come to you either for their children or themselves with autism?
well, I gotta say, in the beginning, it's like anything, you gotta get used to it yourself. But I've had like 10 years now to get used to the idea. And in the beginning, I hated the term like Aspie. It's like, oh my God, I don't know if you call it an Aspie or whatever.
That's funny because you use that now.
Yeah, I use it all the time. It doesn't bother me anymore. But and so I think in the beginning too, you get rejection from people just at the notion. They're like, "Oh, I've known you your whole life. I don't think so."
Oh, they just reject that. They
Yeah,
deny
they
that you even
reject
have
the
it.
diagnosis. Everybody's an expert all of a sudden. And then you get past that, and you're like, well, the expert. It was up to the experts. And then even within the autism community, it's like, well, somebody told you you're autistic, and you went to a doctor and you asked, so you were seeking a diagnosis, like.
Oh gosh.
Asking a doctor if you have something there's something wrong with that. So there's that whole weirdness about that, and then so but yeah, eventually you get through all that and you realize, look, I found a way to have a better quality of life, and understanding what's going on with yourself in particular is very powerful. Right?
Very.
Yeah. So when you kind of give order to all those things that can make sense of it, everything gets easier. It doesn't solve every problem, but everything gets easier.
It gives you clarity.
And when you tell somebody like, look, it's okay to just eat meat, and guess what? Your mind gets clearer, your anxiety goes down, your aches and pains start improving, and you're like, well, we can make this a better quality of life for a lot of people just by getting the information out. And that's really what's important, because you can always assume there's going to be critics, right? Everything from the ardent vegan to the person, like, you know, I say all the time, I've had very little effect on people immediately around me, family and friends and stuff like that. I've had very little impact on them. But if I make a video and I share a message and I'm part of a community, or I help build a community, you know, for autistic people or families or caretakers, technicians, doctors, you know, clinicians, therapists, and stuff like that, then it doesn't really matter if I have very little impact on the people around me. As disappointing as that is, I can pass the information on. And you know how it is when you start a good group, people just start helping other people all the time, right?
Yeah.
Facilitate this environment where strangers start helping strangers that would never come in contact and never been able to help each other before. So you don't even have to do it all yourself, right? You just have to sort of create the next,
Facilitate the space.
right? Yeah. And make it okay for people to go somewhere and talk about it, you know, how to help their kids adapt their diet, or how to get started, or what do you do when this happens, or just to make put the information out there. Because I started Autistic Carnivores, I thought, well, there might be 20 of us I could find on Facebook, you know.
Really? That's what you thought?
Yeah, I thought for sure. I was like, 20, 25 would be awesome. And it's just grown gradually over time. Dr. Sean Baker's helped it grow quite a bit. You know, he'll throw it out there. I'd imagine Zach's probably promoted it a few times. And then lots of people in the group do, you know, like Karina and stuff like that. You know, they're always helping. So, and I'm sure you guys do too when you come across someone that it applies to. So it grew, and it's, you know, we're almost to 900 members. So
wow.
that's
20.
And it's a great group.
Yeah, and 1,000 is probably right around the corner, you know. So
and I love the idea of people who are not typically social being in a social group and interacting in social ways. Like, that's beautiful.
There's a lot of people that's the only interaction they really have with other people is in, you know, groups like that. You know, they don't interact with other people person to person hardly ever. You know?
And you are giving them that opportunity with your Zoom weekly meeting also, if they ever want to come and just chat. So I love that. Really puts them, I mean, we could tell that a lot of them are uncomfortable, but still the fact that they even show up is just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that they feel that they're allowed to be themselves. Like, I remember we had one meeting where one of the members was on there for a little while. He talked for a little bit, and then he was like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I gotta go. And then he got off, you know, the thing. And then we caught up with him later in the chat, you know, or in the Facebook group, and just checked on him. He was like, yeah, I'm good. I just was having social anxiety. And I'm like, okay, cool. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I love that that's just like a safe place for them.
Right. And you're offering that to them. And I think that's super wonderful. I mean, there's probably not another Facebook group that does that. So I think that's great.
Yeah. And I get people I've never talked to in the group who read the comments, or they're watching these videos, and then I get a private message from them, you know, and they're like, could you help me with this? You know? So, you know, even on that level where they're super, super secretive or super reclusive or whatever, you know, they make a connection. I'm sure there's other people in the group that connect with one another that we never know about. So
that's powerful. That's so powerful.
Tom, I want to ask you, so we know that the gut and the brain are linked, right? And we know that people with autism have gut issues, typically. How has carnivore helped you or others that you know of with with stomach issues or gut issues?
I like to cite a very visual sort of thing to start with when this comes up, and that's that movie, The Magic Pill, when they're talking about the little kids, you know, holding their stomachs. You know, a lot of times they have, you know, bloated stomachs and stuff like that. and they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they're in pain, all kinds of problems. So it seems like digestive issues in general are endemic. People suffer from heartburn, GERD, diarrhea, constipation, gas, bloating, the whole 9 yards, right? IBS and colitis, diverticulitis, on and on and on. It doesn't end, right? And we know that the digestive tract is a very complex place. There's lots of living organisms in there. We know pretty much that nobody knows what the perfect combination of those organisms are, but most of them send out chemical signals, that go to the brain, so aside from the neurological connections between the digestive tract and the brain, you have chemical signatures, going to the brain. And then particularly in the small intestine, the food's being broken down and passed into the bloodstream right there, or things are leaking through the wall into the bloodstream right there. And so you can only imagine that there is a very, very close relationship between what's going on in the brain and what's going on in your digestive tract on many, many levels. There's even a shortcut that bypasses the blood-brain barrier that shuttles some of the medium chain triglycerides right to the brain as fuel, which is one of those things when people experiment with like MCT oil or whatever. That's what they're experiencing when their brain lights up, and their brain is really sharp. But you can get those. You don't have to eat coconut oil to get that, or MCT oil from coconuts to get that, because it's going to happen anyways. So the relationship between the brain and the gut are vast and complex, and it seems that most people, when they just eat meat, particularly beef, and on average like a diet that's roughly 50% protein, 50% fat, that their brain works better and their body works better, and these digestive issues go away. So it's in a nutshell, that typical brain fog that people tend to experience after they eat tends to go away. People tend to be less lethargic. They tend to want to exercise more, or just be more active. They tend to want to interact more. Anxiety goes down. People tend to be less depressed than they were before. So clearly there's a very extensive relationship between digestion and mood and brain activity. But it's so complex. It's, we could probably spend the next 2 years talking about it and never get to the end of it.
We probably will.
We probably will.
That's awesome. So any other questions that you guys had in your mind? No?
Well, I was going to ask, what are your hobbies, Tom? Let people know what your hobbies are. We know that you love carnivore. We know that you love helping people, but what are your hobbies? What do you like to do apart from eating steak?
I compulsively build things all the time. I love
build muscles.
Yeah, building muscle is my primary function in life now. Yeah, I love weightlifting just for the sake of weightlifting, and I compulsively build things. I do have a few collections that are hard to explain. So like I collect flashlights, like they're gold.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
swords.
Yeah. Cutlery. Yeah. I have a Viking sword collection, which it's been in a lot of the videos in the background and stuff like that. I use the knives in the pictures when I take pictures of meat and stuff like that. So.
But I love that.
How about archery? You into archery?
I'm into archery. I love archery. Yeah, I love shooting. I love shooting a bow. I have since I was a little kid. It started with my grandfather bought me a toy bow when I was a kid, and it just kept on going. It never stopped. Eventually, I had a coach and was on a team and shot in the junior Olympic program, and on and on and on.
Wow.
Now I just shoot to shoot, just like I just lift to lift, I love to lift. I love to shoot the bow. I actually like all the shooting sports. I like rifle, pistol, shotgun. So I'm into all of those, but I mostly do archery because
And how do you hunt the hogs? Is it with the bow?
yeah. So where I live, you can hunt wild boar or wild pigs.
Or what? Sorry.
Yeah, year round with a bow. In so they're a nuisance. They're an invasive species. They've been destroying property for 300 years here. So and they're plentiful. They repopulate really fast. They could have like 5 litters a year or something. They outcompete a lot of the other species. So they eat everything from baby deer to cats to whatever they can. They tear up the ground all over the place. They root around and try and eat all the grubs and stuff. So they'll go in the park and they'll just tear up a soccer field. You know, they go to
Wow.
horses and schools and yards and stuff like that. And everywhere. They're just everywhere, and it's shocking how many there are just within a stone's throw of a city. They're just we put up cameras to film them, and we'll put them up for a week, and we'll see. They call the little families. They call them sounders. So the sounder will be usually it's a mom and a bunch of piglets. Sometimes there's a male or 2 males in there even, and we'll film 36 different pigs in a week in one little tiny spot, you know, in the wilderness coming through. So there's hundreds and hundreds of them. That's why you can hunt them year round. So
That's awesome. And then also for, maybe people who have newly got a diagnosis of autism or anything, what I love about you is that, like, I remember whenever I first met you, I would call you my beefcake encyclopedia because you were just baffled me with your knowledge, and your intelligence was just like off the freaking charts. So tell us what you do professionally.
Oh, professionally, yeah, it's nothing to do with that per se, but I work in land development.
Yes, that is. That's
I'm a
amazing.
design. I draw plans basically most of the time, like
I couldn't do that.
grading plans and track maps and parcel maps and stuff like that. In the end, it's all pretty boring. Just
But an idiot couldn't do it.
no, but I mean, most people learn to do it. I think that type of work does attract people like myself because, and the whole thing about knowing a lot about a particular subject, people, whether you're on the spectrum or, a high functioning person on the spectrum, or you've been diagnosed with Asperger's. Some people it's the same thing, some people not, but they tend to be able to sustain an interest in a particular subject for a long period of time, which you guys have witnessed some of my compatriots going down rabbit holes and just endlessly pulling up stuff. And then we'll have conversations about it that sometimes last for months. And so that's how we wind up learning about a lot about certain topics. Is it just going? And I didn't know what that was before the diagnosis and before I met other people, because I was married previously, and one time my ex-wife said, "Do you realize it's taken you 2 years to pick out a TV?" And I knew everything about the TVs that were being made. I knew everything about the native resolution, the components inside the TV, what altitudes they would work at and wouldn't work at, and the life expectancy of the parts and all that stuff. And when you have friends that have the same level of interest, it seems completely normal. And then when you find out that, like, yeah, no, most people can't accommodate that level of interest of anything, then you're like, oh, so instead of obsessing about TVs or some type of new technology or something, you turn it towards something like a lifestyle that provides quality of life, right? You figure, oh, that's probably the most important thing I could work on, right? And when you make a discovery and you're like, everything got better for me, I want to share that with everybody else, and you've got cohorts that you can then venture down that rabbit hole with, and you'll see that dogged, relentless sort of pursuit of concepts and ideas day after day after day. And it's comforting to know that there's other people out there that are like that, you know. So
yeah, and it's,
even
you
if
know,
he doesn't live in Sweden.
yeah, even if they do live in Sweden. But I mean, aren't we all obsessed about something? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's relative to just sit there and judge and say, you know, I mean, people could say that I'm obsessed about mental health, or I'm obsessed about, you know, carnivore, you know, and I think that what I like is that you allow people to be who they are and to just accept them where they're at, and and celebrate that, you know, and just be like, oh, so and so is really good at this, or so and so, you know, like, you're this network. You just kind of like link people up, and I really think that that's one of your superpowers.
Yeah, you kind of have to accept people where they are, because like you said, like we're having a meeting and somebody's like, I can't take anymore, I gotta go. They're gone.
Yeah, it's like, it's okay.
It was great up until that point, and we all remember it. It was meaningful, you know. But it just, that's the limit. That's a limit. These unusual limits that people have are coupled with unusual abilities, right? So one thing about learning about, because I was diagnosed dyslexic, dysgraphia, and all that. I was diagnosed with that long before, you know, the autism, and then you realize that these things come as a package, and what they really are is that you have something that most people have a little bit of, you have more of. So like everybody will have some minor dyslexic symptoms, but it's not to the degree that it's a disability, right? And you get past a certain point and it's disabling, right? And the same thing, like you said, we all have the ability to be obsessed with something, but you'll notice that a lot of people on the spectrum have serious one-track minds. Like life is falling apart around them, and they're very, very concerned that all the dice in the casino have exactly the same dimensions. So, you know, how many carnivores can dance on the head of a nail or something like that? You know, they'll go on for days about stuff, weird stuff. It's just how it is. So if you could turn people onto something more productive, a lot of times they'll jump on with you, you know.
And I like that you've given that space and that encouragement for other people to do. You know, like, oh my gosh, Karina comes up with some of the most amazing research, you know, and she's changed my life in some things. And that's one thing that I wanted to tell you, is that you've been in my life for about 8 months now, and you have absolutely significantly changed my life. Because
well, I think we could say that about all of us. Too bad Justin's not here, because I think we've had a direct impact on each other, you know, on a daily basis, right? And it's been life changing for me as well. So, and if anything, I miss doing more research with people like Karina, you know, and building these huge threads with all this, because just like we have this dream of understanding why carnivore works so well, like on an intricate level, we have the same thing about hounding down the roots of autism, you know, because we're all trying to escape these binary arguments of meat's good, meat's bad. Autism is caused by vaccines, or it's caused by this, or it's caused by that. You know, we know that the problem is much more complex. We know that just eating meat won't cure every problem for everybody, but typically it means a much better quality of life, right?
absolutely. Well, thank you for being you. And I am so grateful that our paths have crossed, because, I mean, just even like you believing in me has what has changed my life. And I know that every single person who interacts with you has the same experience, because you allow us to be ourselves and our best selves. So I think that that's your superpower.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, without you, we wouldn't be doing these videos. You know, we wouldn't have the connection that we have because of, you know, the videos really connect us too. So there's a lot that
you facilitate it.
Facilitated.
Yeah, well, and it's my good fortune that you guys came along, because you guys make the videos way better than they were when I was by myself. So, you know, I just happen to be making videos, and I happen to meet you guys, and we click so well. You know, it's just you know, it's one of those things, you know, a lot of people told us they wish they could find the same type of group that could mesh so well, you know, such a great balance, and everybody's got something to bring to the table, you know, and we just keep finding new ground to tear up. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for letting us interview you. Anything else that we didn't cover that I didn't ask you about that you really would like to share in your interview?
No, I just encourage people to, you know, join a Facebook group or something like that, an online group, watch the videos, leave comments, you know, get involved in the community, you know, and try to look at this as, you know, a quality of life issue, you know, improving quality of life for everybody, you know. So that's it. I mean, I don't really think there's anything I need to say that I haven't already said. So
awesome. Well, you want to close us out?
yep, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you would subscribe to the channel, it really help. You know, as you've probably heard from other channels, it's important to support independent channels, because YouTube is bending away from supporting channels like this. They don't get suggested in suggestion videos in the normal scheme as like they used to. So, and some people are being unsubscribed from channels automatically. So make sure you stay subscribed to the channels you wanna get updates from, and leave us a comment. Join us on Facebook. Join Emily's group, Center of Brilliance. Joe Zumbo has Australian Carnivores and Meat-Based Lifestyle. Join that one. You can catch Ray as a coach at MeatRx. You can find him in mine and Emily's group and Joe's group. And other than that, I'd like to say everybody eat some meat and feel better. And whatever you do,
Don't fall
down the carb
hole.
Awesome how we murder that every time.
It's so bad.